Hi, my name is Robert Chelle with Chelle Law, and I'm an attorney that assists veterinary associates with employment contract and independent contractor agreement issues. Today I'm going to talk about veterinary compensation and ProSal review. So when I'm reviewing a contract with veterinary associate, compensation is always near the top of their concerns. I'm going to go over the different compensation models and then kind of a review of ProSal and some of the red flags to think about. So what is ProSal? I mean, it's a combination of the words production and salary. So a general ProSal method would be to give a base salary. Let's just say it's $120 per year. So you get paid $10,000 a month. And then there would be some kind of reconciliation, either monthly or quarterly or annually, where they take all of the collections that the practice has received based upon the veterinary associate's production, and then they would multiply that times some percentage, usually in ProSal it's somewhere between 18 to 22%, and then they would compare that to what they paid out via the base salary, and if there was an excess, then the veterinary associate would get a bonus. Now, there are some ProSal models that have negative accrual, and I'll explain what that is. So when you enter a practice, unless maybe you're doing shift work at an emergency medicine clinic or perhaps urgent care, but if you're just going into like a small animal, normal vet clinic, it takes time to build up. And so it's not uncommon for someone to take a year for their practice to reach maturity. And so if you enter into a job and you have negative accrual, it could be a bad thing compensation wise for the veterinary associate going forward. And let me give you an example of what that would mean. So let's use the $120,000 annual base again. And so let's say month one, they say, all right, well, we paid out $10,000 to you, you brought in $8,000, and therefore you have a negative balance of $2,000. All right. And then that would then be carried forward to the next month. And so you're starting in the whole 2,000. And so let's say once again, they paid out 10,000, you brought in 10,000, you're even, but then that negative 2,000 still goes forward, so you're not going to get a bonus. Now, that's not normally how it works, meaning you're going to have usually a bigger negative balance at the beginning. Obviously, the higher the base salary, the more potential for a negative balance. And so it could go and continue on where you just have this negative balance that you cannot, get out of. I would try to avoid any kind of negative accrual contracts. Sometimes organizations will forgive it either at the end of the quarter or at the end of the year, so it won't carry forward into the next year. But you could get in a situation where you're not getting bonused at all. And not only that, you have to pay it back over time. I've had some people who have had negative accrual contracts where they left and they actually owed the practice money because they had not, kind of reached the threshold to cover their own base compensation. That's always a big concern. So ideally what you would do is you'd have a contract that would have a guaranteed amount with no negative accrual in year one. And a standard way of doing it would be they would take your production from year one, and then the base that they would give to you would be maybe 85% of that to avoid fluctuations. Maybe you go on vacation one month, and so you never have to pay anything back. And then they would do the reconciliation and the potential bonuses, monthly or quarterly. Now, if you are never getting bonused, what are some issues? Well, one, the practice just could be run inefficiently, could be lack of staff, could be lack of clients, it could be bad marketing, it could be a combination of factors. Pretty rarely is it the vet just being so slow or unproductive that they can't meet, whatever threshold exists. Normally there's some kind of ancillary factors that go into them just being unable to be productive. So if you are starting somewhere and you can immediately identify some areas that need to be improved in order to assist you in your practice, you need to let the owner or whoever's in charge, office manager, what is happening, what can be fixed to assist you in being more efficient, And I would put that in writing as well, because you want to establish immediately, these are the concerns that I have, and these are the fixes that could assist me in being more productive. Now, obviously, you don't want to sound like a whiner or you're just complaining about everything. But if there are true things in the practice that can make you more efficient, see more animals, whatever you want to say, don't just sit there, like voice your concerns. Ultimately, if you are on some kind of ProSal model, like depending upon which one is used, this could very much negatively affect how much money you make in the long term. So you want to be on top of it from the very beginning. Now, there are different hybrid models of doing it. As I said before, you can have the guaranteed base with no negative accrual, and then you get a percentage bonus. You could have a negative accrual from the outset with a guaranteed base where you potentially have to pay things back. Sometimes you'll just immediately start with a draw. They'll just pick out a number, and then you'll have the negative accrual and may have to reconcile it at the end of the year. So just be aware of what type of model you're on, and reduce the risk of potentially having to pay anything back in the long term. All right, well, that's a little review of ProSal method and compensation for veterinary associates. If you have any questions about your employment contract or independent contractor agreement, feel free to contact my law firm. Our information is listed below in the description. All right, thanks. Take care.